I'll get started.
Welcome,
Hey,
Rita.
welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Elizabeth Berkeley, and I am the Director of Chicago Grows Food. We're thrilled that you've joined us today for a soil and soil health workshop. Chicago Grows Food is a collaborative project devoted to expanding and unifying the food growing community in Chicagoland. We believe that communities in and around Chicago deserve equitable and holistic health outcomes, and that empowering and creatively connecting advocates for safe and environmentally conscious food production, land stewardship, food access, food security, and nutrition will help bring this vision to life. Whether you are new to gardening or an experienced gardener or just interested in supporting gardeners, we have resources for you. Thanks so much for being here, and I will pass it off. And thank you so much to Dr. Akila Martin.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I can share my screen now, Elizabeth. Oh, okay. All right. All right. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to talk to you all today about, why I love soil. And so I got a whole bunch of slides, but I don't have to go through all of them. If you all have questions, you can definitely come off mute and ask them, or you can type them in the chat, and Elizabeth will let me know the question or comment that you may have. All right, so thank you all for being here. I am Dr. Akila Martin. I'm the daughter to Laurel and James Martin, and my values are freedom and joy. And I don't call myself a soil scientist, I'm a soil enthusiast. And I am working on deepening my partnership with soil. So hence, I'm here talking to you today about soil. All right, so just for you to have an imagination right now as we start talking about soil, and hopefully that maybe you know just a little bit about soil. Maybe this is your first time even hearing about soil, and that your mind is expanded and then you're just ready to jump all in, right? So just imagine that you're walking through one of our forest preserves here in Chicago, or Cook County, I should say, or wherever you are. And imagine that as you walk, that you're being supported by 16,000 invertebrates underneath your feet. So just imagine as you walk through not just the forest, but anywhere that you're walking, whether it's around your home, where you work, where you socialize, there's a whole nother world beneath our feet that most of us have not had an opportunity to meet. And so I hope you have an opportunity to hear some of the things that are happening underground and have an appreciation for that. So this is a new thing that I've learned. Barbara Orrin and I presented at this I'm For Us conference, and it's a conference for people that are doctors, healers, practitioners in that field. And so their theme this year was decolonizing medicine. And one of the presentations there was from this Reconnect and Reclaim Project group. And one of the things that they talked about was the healing practice acknowledgement. So here's mine that's all misspelled. And is it misspelled? Who knows? Don't worry about it. So my healing practice acknowledgement, and you can do this when you're presenting or just with your friends and your family or your tribe, is just talk about how you're healing and how you are intending to do that, or how you may be doing it now. And so since this is soil health, soil healing, I thought this was very apropos. So my statement is, by deepening my partnership with soil, its energies, and its entities, I am declaring my advocacy, support, connection, and protection. So that's mine for right now. And then I won't read this, but people have been doing these land acknowledgements. I hope that we're all genuine in our pursuit of writing these, and that we really do understand, or at least try to understand, the story of the indigenous people here on the land before us. And just want to acknowledge and recognize those that were here, that loved the land, took care of the land, advocated for the land, protected it, for which we stand today. So thank you. All right, so what you're here for, what is soil, right? So soil can be anything that you think of, right? Most people in the beginning were thinking that soil was just dirt, right? So a lot of people refer to soil as dirt. in my opinion and in my mind and in my philosophy, is calling soil dirt is like a cuss word. It's like kind of disrespectful. But I won't say anything if you call it dirt unless we're in a conversation together. I'll just give you the evil eye, maybe the side eye. But soil is so much more than dirt. And not to say that dirt is not soil, because it is. So dust is part of soil. And so keeping that in mind, that soil is if you think about language liberation, right? So if we call something one thing, that comes to mind all types of perceptions and judgments. And so if we use the word dirt, how does that impact how we interact with the actual soil and how we think about it as it being its own being, and that it has rights, right? If you think along those lines. So calling it soil is giving it some personification to it, but also giving it some respect. And so the soil is one of those complex systems that actually has a lot of communication happening under there. And it also provides our water. It holds our water. It's the life starter for all the insects in the world. It is where we grow our food. So it's kind of important, right? We also build homes with the soil. So here we go. So it takes about 1,000 years to create 1 tablespoon of soil. So if you think about that and think about it, takes 1,000 years. So that's not in our lifetime that just 1 teaspoon of soil, 1 inch of soil is being, rebirthed and made into something that we can use. That's a long time. And we want to make sure that we're using practices that are awesome, right? That are amazing, that are in harmony and in balance with the soil, if we're using that as our barometer. So some of the things that soil has in with energy flows is thinking about, if you look at the arrows, they're all pointing down at the soil in the middle here. And we know that energy flows, right? We have our own energy. We eat, we consume food, we drink water and things of that nature to provide energy for us. But thinking about, where do all those things come from, right? They most likely come from the soil, or some form of soil is in there. So as I like to tell people, soil is a parent, it is a guardian, it is a midwife, it's a doula. And why do I say that? Because it is always giving birth, and it is always supporting others' entities in their birthing process. And what do I mean by that? Soil starts as a rock, and as water, precipitation, wind, vegetation grows, organisms are there, it starts to break down that rock and create soil. And what I mean about the soil supporting others' birthing processes, so remember I said that most insects start their life in the soil. There you go. So the soil is there as the incubator so that the organisms can have their process safely and be able to reproduce. So that's why I love soil so far. Hopefully you are starting to see that image as well and begin to get your own appreciation of soil. So soil is a complex system. Lots of people, lots of professionals, lots of people that are architects, hydrologists, painters, people who are building homes, gardeners, farmers, people who do urban planning, people who do anything dealing with the environment have to know something about soil, whether that's through a university system or through any type of developmental training or coursework that you're doing in those particular fields. You have to know something about the soil. And most importantly, where you live, and if you are interested in buying a home, you want to know what's happening with the soil there, right? You want to know the story of the soil. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later, about how you can find out the story of your soil. So one of the things I ask people to think about, and you don't have to write anything, you don't have to answer any of these, but just to put them on your mind, like, how are you in partnership with soil? And what is your ancestral relationship with soil? How can you, if you don't have a relationship with soil, how can you reestablish that? Maybe thinking about, what do you do daily that's connected to soil? So if you take any medications or vitamins, that's all from the soil inherently, theoretically. I don't know what they're doing in those labs with those pharmaceutical companies, but at the same time, it's from soil, right? Some form of plant or element or mineral that's always found in the soil that starts that process. So one thing I also like to put out there, but not to say that I believe this or you have to believe this, but Paul Stamets characterizes the human species as a virus because of the harmful effects our activities have had on the land, i.e. meaning the soil. What do you all think about that? And you can write in the chat or you can come off mute if you'd like.
I definitely agree with that. I think I've thought a lot about how if humans were more thoughtful about the environment and the soil and our land, that it could regrow. The earth would replenish itself if humans no longer were around. That's my feeling.
No, that's good. Thanks, Elizabeth. And it's awesome if you all can, participate. There are no right or wrong answers, no judgments here. So please feel free to say how you feel, as we go through the different slides. But thank you so much for Elizabeth. Did somebody write something in the chat?
Yeah.
Oh, Danielle. Oh,
yeah.
Danielle. Hey, welcome, Danielle.
I think white supremacy greed is a virus, but humans have had harmonious relationships to the land for a long time.
Okay, that's good. I like that you are taking the onus off the actual individual and putting it on the behavior. So that's awesome. Thanks, Danielle. Very much true about greed and our consumption. All right, let me keep going. So I just kind of wanted to show you all the United States, and of course we grow way more than what's shown here, but just to give you an opportunity to kind of see what types of things are grown where. And then later I'll show you a map of kind of like what the soils are like in those areas. So kind of keep this in your memory if you can, of this image. So, we're here in Illinois. I hope everyone is here in Illinois because I don't want to just, put people in location that you may not be. But I'm here in Chicago, up here somewhere. And what we grow here is corn, and I guess we grow some green peas. And of course, we grow soybeans, and I guess that's what they call it, green peas, and wheat and other things, right? And so we can grow certain things here because of the type of soil that we have, because of the story of the soil, which I'll talk about shortly. And if you think about the US, if you've had a chance to travel or had a chance to read about the United States, if you think about the climate, if you think about the things that you've seen grown there, if you look at the color of the soil that's there, the type of buildings that are erected there, that'll give you some indication of what type of soil there is. So like if you go down here to Texas, they have like really high clay content. And so when they build their homes, they cannot have basements because the clay swell and shrink and then they crack. And so with that process happening, they can't have basements there. Even though Illinois here in Chicago, we do have a high clay content, mainly because of the lake bed soils that we have because of the glaciers that came through. Our soils aren't the shrinking and swelling clays that they have here because their land is more arid, meaning more dry. And here in Chicago, we get a lot of precipitation, which you just saw the other day and throughout the year. I see chat. Is there questions I need to stop for? Oh, is it real corn? Well, what do you think, Veronica? I mean, we are recording, so you tell me. No, yeah, I guess we'd have to define what we mean by real, right? I mean, it is real, right? Because it is corn, of what we know is corn, right? What we have been told, taught, things like that. Hey, buenos tardes to you. Hey, Andrea. And they have genetically modified most everything that we eat, right? And so does that make it not real, or does it just make it different? I guess we can debate that at any time. So, yeah, thanks, Veronica. Anybody else can respond if you want to come off mute or write in the chat. It's up to you. Danielle or Elizabeth, I don't know if you all wanted to respond to that. But I'll keep going. So here's another map of the US to look at human food versus animal feed. And this is basically just to kind of show you how what we grow, not necessarily we as in me and you, but what our farmers are growing and how much of that goes to animal feed versus how much comes to us for our consumption. And as you can see on this map, you can see lots of red. So that means we're producing a lot of crop material to feed our animals versus what we're producing to feed ourselves. So I'll leave that for you to kind of think about, sit with, and maybe you can have some responses in the chat, as we move through. All right, here's another map of the US to show you some of the most lucrative crops in each state. So I'll talk about Illinois. And this is not recent per se. I know I've had this up for a few years now, so I'd have to probably update this, or you can look for yourself. But at the time, wheat was our most lucrative crop, and we were making $292 million. That's a lot of money. So, and if you have a chance to look at the rest, California has grapes at their 5.2 billion. Washington has apples at 2.5 billion. So this is how much money that they're making on the different things that they're growing. And I'm sure people use this as if they're just starting out as farmers, like what should I grow? And, that's an ethical value, moral type question. If you're really thinking about, are you really in it to be lucrative? Are you in it really to support food insecure peoples, right, across the United States and the world? So something to think about. And as I go there, we talk about food security and about the land and which the soil resides and what we grow in there. And I don't know how much you all have read or watched or visited different places around the world to look at the soil, to look at the types of foods that people are eating. I know that there are several people that believe globalization has not been great for anybody. And one of those reasons is that if you think about other countries and what they may have eaten in the past and what they're eating now, right? So they're eating just like we do. They're eating things that are cheaper in a sense, for lack of a better word. And so what's cheaper is not stuff that's indigenous or native to them, to their land, or to their bellies. And so how does that impact the health overall? And so I'm just going to leave that question there and move on, which I'm probably going to do a lot just to put things on your mind, as I said. All right, I'm going to stop here and let you all give me, Danielle, you've done this before, so you don't cheat. Which one of these, the top or the bottom, so you could write in the chat top or bottom, which one of these do you believe the home was safe? So is it, do you believe the top photo shows the home is safe, or do you believe the bottom image shows the home is safe? You can say it out loud if you want. You can come off mute, or you can type it in the chat. It's up to you.
I feel like it's a trick question. So I want to say the bottom is safe, but I'm assuming it's the top one.
It's okay. Melissa says it's the top as well. Anybody else? Remember, no judgments. Whatever you say is fine. There's no right or wrong answers here. All right.
From what? What's the safety from?
And I left it open so that you could decide what do you mean by safety? In my mind, I'm thinking safe from flooding. So if I add that to that, what do you all think?
I feel like it's the bottom, but I'm still interested to find out what the answer is.
I'd say the top.
You say the top. Okay. All right. Cool. So depending on, as I'm glad you said that, Elizabeth, safe from what? That's really up to you. In this instance, we're just going to take flooding as an issue, as the safety, right? And I do this specifically because I don't know if you all recall, but back in January 2020, so right before COVID got us, and back in 2017, lots of people were flooded. And I'm sure there were other instances, right? So I'm not denying or invalidating anybody else's flood history or flood story, excuse me. However, in 2020 of January, our lake level was really, really high. So I don't know if you've all been on the south side. So like starting at, what is that, like 40 something going south? They have those black bags that they've placed there, the city has. And they did that because the lake level was so high that the water was starting to come over to Lakeshore Drive, right? Into people's homes that live further south of there. And so I did this specifically because we all are at some point, just like we need to know how to grow our own food, we're going to have to know how to protect ourselves from flood. And so I would say that the bottom picture is safe from floods because they've built what we would call a dike. If you see this circular, which they built from soil around, right? So no water was able to get to their house, right? So they're good. Now, I don't know how they're going to get to where they need to get to because it's a whole bunch of water right here. So they're probably going to, hopefully they have a boat or something where they can wait to get to the next land that may come up. But at the top here, you can see if they tried to build a dike, as you can see, but it failed in a sense, kind of like those levees that failed in other places that we won't name right now. So their home flooded. So at this point, I don't know if this is recoverable or not, but at the same time, we want to know. And if you've had a chance to drive down US 41 going south, like right in East Chicago, and I would behoove you to go so you can smell it and everything. It's horrible. But anyway, check it out. They have built what they call a confined disposal facility. Yeah. Yes, Kenneth. Yep. They've built what they call a CDF, and you may have, if you're on a Friends of the Parks distribution list, they've been talking about the CDF and things of this nature because they want to open it back up and place more material in there, but that's a different CDF. But they've built something like this at the bottom as quote unquote a box so that they can dredge the nearby canal and put those sediments in there. And what they'll do is they'll dredge for 30 years, placing, if you can see my mouse, putting the sediments there, then they'll cap it, meaning they'll cover it, make sure that the layers are there so that none of the contamination, if it is contaminated, can get out. So keep that in mind. All right, next one. So there are about 70,000 types of soil in the US. Remember I said it's about a tablespoon of soil has more organisms than people on Earth. So can you imagine that? There's a tablespoon of soil, it has more entities in that tablespoon than there is people on Earth. So that's a lot of entities in just one tablespoon. Nearly all antibiotics are obtained from our soil organisms. And then in 1 gram of soil, there are 5,000 different types of bacteria. And I'm sure that number could increase just as we are all evolving. Every entity is evolving as well. Yes, Elizabeth. Yep. So I'm gonna go through these real quick because I feel like I spent a lot of time on other stuff. So this is basically telling you how soil is formed. So my undergrad was soil science. That was my degree program. So I took courses that were nothing but soil. And of course, as if you all been through college, there are several other courses you have to take, those required courses. But one of the courses that we all had to take was, and it's called different terms at different universities or colleges, soil morphology, soil genesis. And so this is basically how soil is started. And these are the 5 factors that impact the formation of soil. If you recall, I said they start from a rock. And so depending on the type of rock, that's wherever you are, that's going to be what we call the parent material, meaning it's the parent. Go ahead, Elizabeth, you had a question? Oh, okay. And so once that rock is there, right? So it's there, it's present, part of the earth, so over time, the organisms that appear, the climate, meaning the precipitation levels, if it's warm, is it hot, is it cold, is it just, chilly, the wind factors, all of that, and then a topography, meaning the lay of the land, hills, mountains, things of that nature. All of those work together to create the soil that we have. And so here's just another depiction of what happens. So remember I said we have that parent rock, bedrock. If you've had a chance to drive on the turnpike east, like in Pennsylvania, things like that, they have huge mountains there. And what you can see, because they've cut through that bedrock, they've cut through that mountain to build that turnpike. So basically that road that we drive through, you can see that parent rock and it's huge. I mean, the length, the distance that it spans is amazing. And so that's that bedrock. That's that rock that starts that process as we go from left to right on this picture on what happens. So we see the rain happening, organic matter starts to come, vegetation starts to grow, it starts breaking down the rock, and we start building what we call the soil profile and or the soil horizons. And this is just to show you the rock because I didn't know if you believe me or not. So another form of soil is like a volcano, right? So when a volcano spews out all the lava onto the land, that's called land creation, which are islands, right? And so that's soil. This is soil. All of this right here, that's soil. It's not the bestest of the best soil as far as nutrients, but it's awesome because it's land creation. So it creates a space for us to be and space for other entities to be there as well. And just keeping in mind, thinking about what soil is, it's, part organic, part inorganic, some minerals, right, from the rocks are all in there. Air is in there, of course, because we do have aerobic organisms like us and anaerobic ones that don't necessarily need oxygen to exist in this world. So we have all that happening in this complex that we call soil. So I wanted to give you a view of when I said earlier about the soil horizons and a soil profile. So it starts at this bottom here, that parent rock, and then that sea horizon, which we don't usually see. But if you've been to like a quarry, we have a quarry like I think on 130th, 131st over, if you take the Bishop Ford, the 9094, is it 994? Yes. And you get off 131st and go right, things like that. You can see the quarry. You'll be able to see this sea horizon and bedrock. And then we'll get to this B horizon, this A and O, and then there's sometimes an E. What we mainly see here as urbanites is this A horizon. We may sometimes see the B horizon, but it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult. But we're definitely working in this A horizon. And this A horizon is akin to, if you've been to any nursery or garden store, is what they call topsoil. And topsoil is the part of that soil profile where the entities are, where all the exchanges are happening, the transfers are happening, the energy transfers, the plant's roots are there, the mycelia are there, everything is happening, the organic matter is there. So when they sell you topsoil, right, they've taken that topsoil from some other place and they put it in a bag to sell to you. Now, they have 800 different types of soil that they sell now. They have garden soil, they got topsoil, they got peat moss, they got compost, they have container soil, they have potting soil, potting mix. It's so many things. And so I would behoove you to read the label in its entirety so you know the story of that soil, meaning you know the origin of it and what's in it. Because you want to make sure that just like anything that you consume, you want to make sure that your body can indeed have a positive relationship, whatever it is that you are putting in it. And that's the same thing with the soil. And also for thinking about soil is, I'm sure you're getting soil because you want to grow something. So you want to make sure you investigate whatever it is you're trying to grow. What are the utmost beautiful experience for this plant or vegetation to grow in? What type of soil do they need? And so we're going to talk about some of those things right now. Do I have any questions, Elizabeth? Am I good to keep going?
You're good, but I would love it. I don't know what the end of this presentation looks like. If you're able to share some of your favorite companies or local businesses that you prefer to buy soil from or get soil from.
Yeah, I can share a list, Elizabeth, and you can post it with this so people can have it. Yep, good question. All right, here's another call and response. I hope more people respond. This is not a trick question, Elizabeth. So we're looking at the left and the right. So the left is over here and this is the right. Tell me which one of these soil profiles is shallow. So put in the chat left or right for which one of these is shallow. Or you can come off mute and say it out loud. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Kenneth. Danielle, you can participate too. All right. So you, Elizabeth and Kenneth, thank you so much. It is the left, and you may ask why. It's because shallow means not deep, right? The opposite of deep, meaning that it's a very small amount, right? And so if you think about a pool, shallow end is, the height is very low versus the deep end where the height is really high. Maybe you can't stand in there. So it's the same applies to soils. And this is a shallow soil profile. And why do I say that? Is because I can see this bedrock / parent rock really quick. And then I see the soil horizons and then the vegetation. Hopefully that came out clear. On this side on the right, there's a long way down before I don't even see bedrock per se, unless I can imagine that this is it down here. But you can see these different colors of the horizons, right? And this is how soil scientists did, how they figured out the type of soils across the world. They dug huge pits, and so that they could do this, put this measuring tape here to look at the different horizons and also kind of see what's happening. And this is a really deep soil. As you can see, it's very long. You can see the vegetation, you can see the plant's roots. Remember, I was saying this is like the A horizon where the vegetation is happening. Not too much is happening here as far as vegetation. So this is probably either the B or C zone or horizon, as I showed you earlier, where a lot of what they call alluvial things are happening. All right, next slide. So did I skip? I didn't want to try to skip the slide. All right. So what soil scientists have done that they've dug all these pits across the world to try to what they call, classify soils, figure out what they are, what color they are, because soils come in all colors. You can find a pink soil right at, if you've all been to, what is it called? The Indiana Dunes, right east of us, of Chicago. They have what we call a spodal soil, which are usually found like in Florida and places closer to water, which, that the dunes are by the water, by the lake. But the soil orders across the world are here. And we have in our area here in Chicago, we have what we call mollisoils. That's with an M. And that description means that we have dark colored soils and then they have a high content of organic matter, which is why they're dark. If you've ever been south of us, in the South, what we call the South of the United States, their soils are red. And they're red because of the iron that's in them. And those soils are what we call highly weathered because the climate in the South is, much more warmer than it is where we are. So there's a lot more exchange and chemical processes and reactions that are happening in the soil. So that's why we call them highly weathered. I mean, there's a lot happening down there. Not to say there's not a lot happening where we are, but we have seasons, right? So we have periods of warm, hot, cold, and chilly. And then we have a lot more precipitation. So that also impacts what happens. And if you go to the western part of the United States, we have what we call arid soils, meaning they're arid. So that's that arid part of arid soils. They're very dry. They don't get a lot of precipitation. If you go up here, we have what we call jello soils, meaning that the soil is usually covered with ice for a certain amount of time. So that's why they call them jello soils. And you can always do your own investigation to look these up if you want to, see this a little further. And if you're from a different country, if you have family in other parts, you can do your own investigation of what's happening with their soils. Here's another look at the different soil orders. And so remember I was saying soil is red. You can see those red colorings here. So there are black soils, there are brown soils, red soils, white soils. So white soils will have a lot of calcium deposits in them, just like calcium is white, it impacts the soil. So these are ours right here, what we call mollisoils, as you can see here. Right next door to us in Indiana, they have some mollisoils, but they also have these, I don't know if it's up here, these alpha soils with an A. And they're similar to mollisoils, but they don't have as much organic matter as we have. But Indiana has such a variation of soil profiles from north to south that it is so amazing as a state along in that manner of soils. They have these soils called frangipans, which is basically like a silt texture that when you pick it up, they fall apart. And it's beautiful to just see the difference, the variation of soils as you drive through Indiana. So I'll keep going. So remember I was saying there are different terms for soil. Remember I said dirt is one. People call it soot, mud, clay, topsoil, substrate, earth, loam, dust, ground, silt, ash, land, humus, not humus, humus, make sure say that. One important thing that we talk to, people that are wanting to garden and or farm or whatever it is you're trying to do, even in your plants in your home, if you have your house plants, you need and want a good soil structure. And here are some visual image of what soil structure looks like. And you can quote unquote repair your soil structure. And so one way that you can, impact your soil structure in a way that's not necessarily as helpful as you like is through compaction. So if you think about the different parks and the different concerts we have in those areas, different events we have, where there's lots of people, lots of vehicles, lots of apparatuses that are placed on top of the soil profile, that causes compaction. And especially if it rains and then people come and vehicles come, just imagine the amount of compaction that occurs. And that compaction is just like what you think. It's like squeezing, stepping on, smashing the soil and all of its entities that are residing in that complex system. And so that kind of destroys the soil structure. And so if you are wanting to bring that back to, some form of beauty, you have some work to do on that. And just another look at the soil condition. You may have seen this look here, especially like if you've walked, you can tell where the soil is compacted because it's those corner areas where the sidewalk meets the vegetation, and it looks cracky, like you see the soil, but it doesn't look black anymore. It's like this beige color here, and you see cracks in it. That's the poor condition. That's called compaction. And you'd have to dig that up and kind of put some other things down to get that structure back and get that fertility back, which we can talk about later. I'm going to keep moving on so that, all right. So one of the things that we learn about soil outside of that soil genesis part is we have what we call a soil physics, which is the study of movement of water through the soil. And then we have soil chemistry, which is all about the interactions and reactions that are happening in the soil. Then we have soil microbiology, where we're only studying the entities that live in the soil, from the bacteria to the fungi to the actual rodents to snakes to everything that lives in the soil. So we're looking at that. And then there are a host of other courses that we look at the soil, plant, and water interaction, right? So importantly, what people know now is the soil physics, right? They know how water maneuvers through the soil. And if you have, if you've noticed around your home, if you've seen puddles form, not necessarily in the street, just like where your vegetation is growing or where your soil is growing, you can already tell the type of permeability, the infiltration, and all of that of your soil. And if it starts to pool or you see a puddle, kind of means you're not getting a lot of infiltration. So that means that precipitation is not penetrating the surface of the water. So it's not getting to the plant's roots. And we want that water to go through the soil profile. Why do we want that water to go through the soil profile? Because the soil is, in the past, is supposed to be that filter, right? Because if you don't live in Chicago and you live in a more rural place, you're probably building a well and you're pumping your water from the water table, i.e. groundwater, to get your drinking water or whatever you're using your water for. And so you're counting on that soil profile, because you want a deep soil profile, because you want that precipitation to go all the way through, knock off any of the toxins that could potentially be there. So when you go to pump it, that water is ready for you to drink. Of course, we pay taxes here in Chicago. We have a water reclamation plant. We have a water purification plant. We have one right by Rainbow Beach and one down by Navy Pier that does that for us. And it comes through pipes to our home, right? That we get the water. It's being filtered for us. And for some of you who buy bottled water, if they're truly, to the label, they're saying this is spring water, that means they got it from the soil. They dug somewhere where there's a water table, a high water table, to get the water to put in that bottle for you. So keep that in mind as well. So we want that soil to do its job. And real quick, there are 3 elements of soil. One of them is clay, one is sand, and one is silt. And that's not shown here, but I'll show you in the next picture. We have high clay content here, especially as you go north, like closer to the Lake Michigan. So I don't know if you all remember or know that, well, you probably don't remember because we weren't here, if you're in my age group, but the lake went far west, right? We pushed it back so that we could build what we call Chicago. So most of the soils that we have in this area are what we call fill, meaning that they put material, and it could be anything, honestly, that they used to fill this land, build it up so that they could build homes and build, commercial buildings, industry, and all like that. So keep that in mind. And the sandy soil, so sand at the beach, that is considered a soil. Just want to make sure people know that. And then silt is, like I said, it's like flour, like cooking flour. It has that texture, is soft and is, very breakable. Clay is like Play-Doh. If you've ever had Play-Doh when you were a child, it feels like that sticky, is, it's hard to penetrate it. And so on this right here, when they talk about loam, and when you go to the store and buy potting mix or potting soil, I don't like to call it potting soil because it's something that they create in the bag somewhere, right? And they're putting it in the bag and selling it to you. So potting mix is basically a loam, which people have come up with the ratio of what clay, sand, and silt should be in this particular mix so that the plant's roots can go through as they need to, the entities can do their jobs, the water can get through, air can get through. And so they normally call that a loam. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So this is what we call a soil texture triangle. And I'm gonna come right back to that. I just wanted to show you that. You can do your own soil texture analysis right at home. You can do it 2 ways that you can do at home. The third way will require you to send it off and let the lab do the work. One way, the easiest way, is to get some soil, wet it, make a ball, and as you can see at the top here, try to make a ribbon. You'll measure the ribbon, and it'll let you know the type of soil texture that you have. Another way is to put some soil in a clear jar with water, put a lid on it, shake it, put it somewhere where it can't be disturbed for 24 to 48 hours. And I'll share with Elizabeth the guidelines for how to do that, so you can do that on your own. And you would come here to this soil texture triangle to kind of see what's your texture of your soil. So remember I said that loam soil was here. So it has a percentage of silt is on this angle. This is sand, and then clay, right? So it's got to have between like a 20% amount of clay, maybe a 40%, 40 to 50% amount of sand, and then the silt is about 50 to 60. So those are kind of like the percentages, the ratios that they come up with to say that's a loam. Most of our soil here in Chicago is not a loam. It's probably going to be a sandy clay loam or a clay loam. It just depends on where you are. The further you go west, it's going to have more clay, and the further you go east, it's probably have more sand because we're getting towards the sandbar, the beach, or the lake. I'll stop there for a second. Elizabeth or anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Danielle. Hey, Keela.
Hey, Danielle.
Dr. Keela. I'm just curious about mixing. You mentioned that soil mixes that's in a bag isn't it's kind of something that's manufactured. Do you have any recommendations for us to potentially mix our own soil for our edible gardens?
Yeah, and I can definitely put that together, Danielle. And when Elizabeth shares this out, they can share that with you. But that's a great question, Danielle. I've been working on my own soil mixes myself, and I'm a trial and error. I'm an experimentalist, so I'm still experimenting. And the way my house sits and way your home may sit, you have to know that too. I get a lot of sun. So I can't, sandy soils will, if you think about sand, right, water goes right through. If you think about clay, the water doesn't go through as well. And if you think about silt, if you think about flour, it soaks it up, right? It absorbs it. So that's why we want that good ratio of those 3 elements in there. But you got to also keep in mind the location of where you're trying to grow, because if it's really warm, a sandy, high sand content wouldn't be really good because the water's going to go right through, evaporate or whatever before it gets to where you want it. So it would all depend on the location of where you're trying to grow, whether it's indoors or outdoors, Danielle. So great question. And then what you're trying to grow. Because some vegetation like sandy soils, right? That's why in California, places like that, because they have sandy soils, They can grow what they can grow, but we can't grow it here because we have a different soil texture and a different profile. So keeping in mind, that's also an indicator that you have to think about, like, what am I trying to grow and what does it like? Does it like a lot of water? If it likes a lot of water, then you want more clay content. If it doesn't like a lot of water, you need more sand. So that's also, to keep in mind on that. I hope that was helpful, Danielle.
That was super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll put something together to share. Okay. Thank you for that question. How much time do I have, Elizabeth?
We have about 10 minutes.
See, I talk too much. Y'all got to tell me to stop. All right. So let me go real quick through soil chemistry, just so I'll hit on each one real quick so you can just hear. So this is, like I said, one course you would take if you were studying soil science. And this was my least favorite subject, so I'm spending the least amount of time on there, but people who like chemistry, beautiful, blow it up. So why do we study soil chemistry? And it's important because it talks about the fertility, meaning the ability for the soil to do the work, to be able to do the transfers, the transformations, so that it has the nutrients to provide to the entities that live there, as well as the plant's roots, right? And so that soil, to equate that to make it applicable to maybe what you're thinking. So you would do a soil test to see how much nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the trace minerals, the bases that are in there. So looking at calcium, magnesium, all of that. We want to know what's happening in this soil, because at the end of the day, it's just like us. We get a blood test, we get our blood drawn because we want to know what our sugar levels, unfortunately, what are our iron levels, right? What are our calcium levels? What is our B12 and the B complex? It's the same thing that we're trying to do to the soil. We're trying to figure out what's in there, how much of is it in there? And then if we need to make some adjustments, how do we do that? So that's kind of what soil chemistry is in that applicability. On the side of the sciences is a little bit more involved, where they really study what we call the cation exchange capacity and the soil clays. And so they spend a lot of time trying to figure out like surface area of these soil colloids. So meaning like those things I showed you earlier, how soil breaks up, the surface area of that, because that also impacts how nutrients, so meaning like nitrogen, the NPK can get to the soil, so that can also exchange to the plant's roots. So it's a lot involved in that, and I don't want to hurt anybody's brain on that, but just know that it's a lot happening in the soil chemistry. Let me move to one of the things that you can test very quickly. They sell the pH meters at just about everywhere at this point now. So you can get one, you can order it online, however you like to shop. You can test your soil pH. What I've found in Chicago is that most soils that I've seen across the South, North, and suburbs it's a neutral pH. But as I said, the pH of soils is very different across the world, right? If you go to the west of us, their pH is more acidic, meaning their soils are more acid. And so what they grow there is because of the acidity in their soil. What we grow here is because of the soil pH that we have here. So keep that in mind. So you can see the soil pH here. So red indicates an acidic soil, and this blue or purple indicates a more alkaline soil. So meaning more than 7. If you know the pH scales from 0 to 14, 7 is neutral. That's usually what water is. And now they sell alkaline water, which is probably it's above 7 now. So you probably have to look at that to see what they're saying. And if you think about your belly, right, your belly is very acidic and it's a lot happening in there. And so, they tell you to do, milk of magnesia and things of that. They tell you to ingest a base, right? Because your stomach your belly is acidic, and they tell you to ingest the base so that it could react and make it more neutral. So your stomach won't hurt anymore. You won't have bubbly guts and things of that nature. So if that helps you understand pH, I hope that image gave you that. So looking at this soil pH across the world, that also indicates to us what can grow there, more effectively. I'll keep going. This may be something people usually like seeing this. So if you have plants, and you want to know what's happening with the nutrients. Remember, this is still soil chemistry, looking at these different elements here. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium. This chart tells you what's available at what pH. Now, it's a game, right? It's a balance that we all have to play. But most importantly, you can see the ones that we really want, the NPK, is at that, 6.5 to about 7, which I said is like that neutral zone. And also the neutral zone that they found that if you do find yourself living in an area where maybe industry was there before and they may have left some undesirable elements in the soil, which, instead of using other words, a neutral soil will help keep those immobilized. So meaning that hopefully they won't be able to be taken by the plant's roots. And then when you're consuming whatever it is, the fruit or the leaves, that you are not ingesting any of those undesirables. So that's something that they read about. And I can share that with Elizabeth as well for you all to read about. If you've seen your plant's leaves, like, and house plants are outdoor, you can do your own homework as well to find out what's happening, because they have all types of apps now. You take a picture, they tell you everything's happening. This is just a quick screenshot of what could be happening with your plant. If it has like these splotches on there, if it's yellow, it has this purple color on there, purple, red, and this color. Most of the times it's probably overwatering from us, especially if they're indoor plants. I would say set a schedule of your watering and you stick to that. Like watch, do your own experiments and trying to see, does this plant need to be watered every week? Maybe it only needs every 2 weeks. Maybe it needs every month. So really getting to know your house plants and how they are reacting to not just water, but to you, the type of music you could be playing, the type of conversations you could be having. All of that impacts everything, right? Because it impacts us. So just think that the plants are being impacted as well. Another chart that kind of shows the deficiencies, and this is more for the micronutrients. So micronutrients are those ones that are not needed in huge amounts, right? And so, but they are needed because they do great things. Just like we need them too, the plants need them as well. So, that's why the vitamin industry is making lots of money, because we're not eating the appropriate things so that we get the nutrients. So now they're selling us all of these different micronutrients so that we can have that. Last thing I'm gonna talk about is soil microbiology, because I know my time is winding down. This was my second least favorite. My favorite was soil physics. Soil micro was okay. So soil microbiology is really what it says. You're looking at the entities that live in the soil, some that you can only see through a microscope and some that you can see with the naked eye, which you can see here on this picture to the left. What I will say is most important, why we study the soil organisms, because they are part of the communicators of that soil. And the fungi, the myceliae, the lines of communication from the plant roots to the soil, to all the other entities, to the water, to the air, to all of that work together in this complex system so that everybody is in harmony and everybody's in balance. So understanding what's happening in this soil food web that I'm showing here, go up, and being able to see if anything is happening, right? Being able to pinpoint anything that's happening as far as invasive plants, right? So we know that our plants can get diseases just like we can get, they can catch that and, basically take them out. So we want to be able to understand what those microorganisms that could potentially be doing it, just like viruses and bacteria do to us, it does the same thing in the soil and the plants. So we study microbiology so that we can get that. I think that was the last thing. Oh, this is the last thing for real. You paid your money already in your federal taxes. The NRCS, USDA, so the National Resource Conservation Service, which they used to be the Soil Conservation Service, they changed to NRCS a long time ago. They created this, what they call the Web Soil Survey. The link is here. If you're interested in buying a home or buying a business and you want to know what's happening with the soil, you just want to know in general, it's not going to tell you a lot, but it gives you enough to go do your own, to do more further investigation. What it does is if you click on where it says Start WSS, that's the World Web Soil Survey. That's what WSS stands for. You can go in there and look. It's a map that zooms in and out across the United States, and you can make what they call an AOR, and basically an area that you're trying to look at, and it'll zoom in for you, and it'll tell you everything that they can physically about the soil there. And it's really helpful for people who are intending to buy property, so you can at least know what's happening. Usually in Chicago, it's probably going to say field because, as I said, Chicago is mostly field. It may be more interesting to look at places that haven't been urbanized to look at their soil profiles and what this soil survey can show you. I'll stop there because I feel like it's 1 o'clock.
Do you have, I was curious if you had resources for or suggestions on, like, if you realize that your soil is missing some key nutrients, like best maybe organic ways to get the nutrients to the soil.
Are you asking me, Elizabeth, or are you asking everybody?
Yeah, anybody directed at you, but if you need, a second to get your breath and have some water.
No, it's okay. So say the question again. I want to make sure. You said, are there ways to get the organic matter? Is that what you're saying, to the soil?
Yeah, or just like good resources for knowing how to get it. Is there something I can use in my kitchen? Do I have to buy a specific oil? What are the ways to get the nutrients into the soil if it's missing that?
Yeah, no, good question. So the only way that you will really know, like if you want to know like exactly, is to do a soil test, and they have labs that you can get the sample and send it off, and it'll tell you the levels of all those nutrients that I talked about. They'll tell you that, and then we can, if you want to talk to me, and I have another partner, Dr. Israel, we can talk to you about what the management plan, care plan, basically, of what that means. So what you can add, how much of the cost to add that. And all of that is based on the size that you're trying to grow, right? If you have a garden bed or a raised bed, or if you have a whole area plot of land, we would need to know all those numbers to tell you what to add. But most people at this point are really just buying compost, or you can get free compost. It just depends. Some people have community composting. They even have countertop composters now. I have one. I can't say that I've been using it so far. I did in my other house. I haven't moved it to this house, but they do have those that you can, do your own compost. They sell compost bins, and you can do all of that. But there is I won't lie and say that it's easy, because that's not necessarily true. It's not hard. It's not easy either, but it does take a little bit of brain power to kind of think about all the things that you're going to need to have a successful compost pile if you want to do it yourself. So, you can do food scraps and, leaf clippings and all like that. But just keeping in mind, whatever you're putting in there, you want to be careful of what that is, because if you're planning to grow something with that and consume it, subsequently, we want to make sure that whatever we're putting in there is as pristine as possible. So I'll leave that at that, Elizabeth, if that was helpful. Yeah. So nutshells, if you want to add quick calcium, not quick, but long-term calcium, if you like crustacean shells, you can put those, grind them up. You can put those in there. People have used coffee grounds, but coffee is acidic. So you want to make sure that, that if what you're growing likes acidity, and you don't want to add as much. Banana peels. So fruit peels are always good. Nutshells are always good. I mean, it just depends on, what you're trying to go. And you can buy mushroom compost. I'll keep in mind that mushrooms will pop up sometimes, depending on if it's really damp out. They will pop up, which is awesome. Mushrooms are beautiful. Like I said, they are the communicators in the soil. So you definitely want some mushrooms, some mycelia there. But I know that that's what a lot of people who have gardens, they usually use mushroom compost, or they've gotten compost from someone who has donated it to them. And you just want to know, what is it? Because sometimes they're giving you stuff from like they've cut down trees and they're using that, and that could cause some pH imbalance. So you just want to know if you're not making it yourself, you want to know what it is before you put it down on your plants. And you can put it on your house plants as well. Okay, thanks, Kenneth. Awesome. You did the
eggshell. Kenneth says, yeah, you got it.
Yes, compost tea. Thank you, Kenneth. There are several people. I know David Toledo has their compost tea company, and I've been going to different farms around the city, and they've been making their own compost tea. And you can do the same thing. You can make your own compost tea. It's not too difficult. It's something you can definitely do. And it's a tea. You don't drink it, but it's a tea for the for you. You place it on the soil, inject it into the soil. Thanks, Kenneth.
Great. Any last words, any last questions? I know we're a little bit over time. I appreciate everyone hanging out and being here to learn from Dr. Akila Martin.
Yeah. Yes, I really appreciate you all being here and listening. If you have questions, you can always email me. I'll put my email in the chat. energetic.roots@gmail.com.
Any last words of wisdom for us before we end the call?
I don't know. I feel like I said a lot, Elizabeth. Just love the soil, deepen your partnership with the soil. Go out there and smell it. It's beautiful. You can eat soil. They even sell clay. It's a great cleanser. It's great for the face, for the skin. So just be a part of it as much as you can.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you all so much. Have great afternoons.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
I have a question.
I can try and answer, Danielle. Oh, Martha, sorry.
Yes. Will the presentation come along with, I understand that this is going to be available in Spanish?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
it may take us a couple weeks because we just have to find the translator, but we will definitely be following up with Spanish.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. I'll be patient. All right. Gracias. Bye.
Thank you.